I can't say enough positive things about initially stepping into Kratom. And again, coming from a recreational perspective, because I wasn't overcoming an addiction at the time. And, you know, I wasn't in any significant pain. I will say when I have hurt myself, um, I'm I refuse to take any sort of pharmaceutical opiates. So a little bit of kratom goes a long way for my pain. I'm not allowed to tell people kratom helps with pain. That's the sticky part. But I can tell you from personal experience, absolutely, it has helped me deal with lower back issues and stuff when I've hurt myself at the gym without getting me high. And I think that that's invaluable.
So I'm here with Abram, somebody I met because I was on NBC Nightly News. If you don't know, definitely check it out. I'll make sure there's a link to it in the show notes. But I was recently on the national news, and Abram reached out to me to chat, and I invited him to come on the podcast. So, Abram, I'm so glad we connected from a little news
Me
story
too.
I did recently. Appreciate you doing that.
Absolutely. I was delighted to see that for once there was a news format that wasn't totally biased against Kratom. So when I saw that you were out there, I was like, I got to find a way to reach out to her, see if there's some synergy here.
I'm so glad you did. Well, when NBC producers reached out to me, they found me through this podcast, which is awesome. And
That is cool.
they were very impressed with my story. We had a long talk on the phone and super impressed. And next thing you know, they're flying out to my home to spend hours
Wow.
with me, interviewing me.
Yeah.
They wanted to film me making kratom and consuming it, having me sit right here in this chair and doing my podcast. And it was a wonderful experience. But I knew it was going to be a short news segment. I knew they did tell me there would be somebody else they're interviewing for the other side of kratom. But overall, I think that was pretty balanced. You usually don't see anything positive about kratom in national news.
Not at all, and it's a stark contrast to what I experienced personally when the Tampa Bay Times reached out to me because they produced a pretty terrible article. We, as a team, we actually showed up to protest that article, but you could tell it was going to be a negative spin from the moment I talked to the journalist. And yeah, it was a breath of fresh air. I was delighted to see it because we need representation that's neutral. We need representation that's positive because the vast majority of it is just it paints a terrible picture for people who want to consider kratom as another alternative. Yeah,
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I started this podcast. I've been consuming kratom daily for 6 years for my chronic pain. It's been a game changer for me, and it is for so many other people I talk to, but not just people that suffer from chronic pain. There's so many other ailments. And it's just an interesting plant that there's not enough information about it, like good, positive, factual information. And I think there's nothing better than firsthand experience from others and just hearing these kratom stories. So I'm really interested to hear your story about how you got started. So why don't you tell us like life before kratom and what was going on in your life?
for sure. I am one of the proud recreational kratom users. Okay, I want to make that very clear. I don't have any chronic ailments. I'm blessed to not have chronic pain that I deal with. Fitness is a huge part of my life, and kratom plugs in so well with my life that I know its potential for others is tremendous. Growing up, I had a single mom. She was a superwoman. I can't say enough positive things about her. I talked to her multiple times a week. She was amazing. But I was a goody two shoes. I played violin. I was homeschooled. I did martial arts. And at some point in time, growing up without a dad, being a little bit different, because if you're growing up as a young man and you play the violin, you're not exactly the cool kid. I figured out that I could make a lot more friends if I started to do the kind of cruddy things that my friends were getting into. So, drugs were pretty much my first foray into making my own decisions. They were my decisions, but they weren't necessarily good decisions. So, growing up, I had the goody two shoes era, and then I got into the rough patch. And eventually, around the age of 20, I drove up to New York to spend a month with my biological father for the first time in my life. And it was at that moment when I decided to get my butt into gear and try and become what my mom worked so hard to make me be. But I knew nothing about Kratom. I'm 34 years old, and from my 20s, I would say until about 24 is when I was first introduced to Kratom. So about 10 years ago, um, I had no idea that there were plants that could be an exit door or the lesser of many evils. You know, I mean, obviously through college, I drank a lot, I partied a lot, but I did well in school, and I used to work in hospitality at Red Lobster, of all places. I worked at three different locations. I graduated debt free from college by waiting tables and having roommates. So my first discovery of Kratom came along with Kava, but it was because we went to the beach in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is where I still reside. And on our Beach Tuesday trip, my friend Nicholas Jackson said, "Hey, guess what, man? I just tried some kava." And I'm like, "What's that?" He's like, "Well, it's kind of like alcohol, gives you a mild buzz, blah, blah, blah." So we had our whole day of drinking and partying at the beach. And on my way home, I saw Bula Cafe, which is a kava bar in St. Pete's, one of the first. And I busted a U turn and I popped in there. And I can still remember my first ever kava tender. His name was Blake, and my first ever friend from over 10 years ago, Sean. And I sat down at the bar. I had kava and I had kratom. And I had a magical time talking with Sean and Blake and the other people that were in there. This big question kind of like popped into my head. Where was this stuff when I was a teenager? Where we didn't know what it was. Um, but, anyways, from that point forth, I knew that I found a second home. And I used to live in Tampa. So I would drive across the bridge 4 or 5 or 6 times a week just to go to this kava bar. And it was the first time in my life where I made friends that were not a consequence of school or work. I met a whole new circle of people. I met people who were former addicts. I met other college kids. I met people who were there recreationally, and I met people who were there therapeutically. And so that was my first time at Bula Cafe having kratom and kava together. They go hand in hand for me. And from that point forth, I was I was hooked. Not in like a bad way or a life destroying way. Actually, there were periods of time where I would just quit taking kratom altogether to see, is it the kratom and kava that's making me come to this place, or is it actually the sense of community that I feel? And during those times where I would take a hiatus from kava or kratom, I learned that hey, it's the atmosphere too, and I love it. And so I've been drinking kratom tea or taking kratom products for 10 years, and um, hopefully that answers your question. But kava bars, they were my introduction.
That is so interesting. I know in Florida that is such a big booming industry. We just don't have as many kava bars. I live in Houston, which is the fourth largest city in the country, and I only know of one, and it's like way out north of town. It's pretty far from where I live. But why is it that so popular in Florida? You think? I've always been curious about that.
Well, yeah, great question. By the way, I think I've been to that kava bar in Houston. I travel a lot, and I think it's called Elixir Lounge, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
that's it.
Very cool place in a tiny little town. It's awesome. So there's some interesting things about Florida. One is that up until recently, real estate prices are very low, and the pace of the state is pretty chill, unless you're in Miami. But I would say that between Bula and Low Tide, they were kind of like, and the Knock down on the east coast of Florida, they were kind of like the formative members of kava bars in the state of Florida. And once they gained a significant enough following, pretty much anybody that walked into one of these kava bars that had a breath of entrepreneurial spirit said, I'm going to open one of these one day. See how well they're doing, see what kind of culture and community they're creating. I want to do that myself. Right. So I think the seed gets planted. There's a community that rallies behind the plants. People with entrepreneurial spirit decide they want to step up and they want to go out on a limb and adventure and make their own business. And so I think in Florida we've got like 300 kava bars, but it matches the vibe. A lot of these places are very island themed. You know, we've got the beach right here. As to why Texas, it just hasn't taken off yet. The only thing I can think of is the pace of the city in Houston. It's so busy. It's so fast paced. It compresses people, and it's hard to imagine a community within Houston having the time to sit down and bond. Of course they can, but then when you can't find a good commercial real estate piece that has adequate parking, just it's hard. It's hard to do. My hope is that in the next 10 years, there will be hundreds of kava bars in the state of Texas and dozens in any other state that can support them. I would rather see more kava bars that sell kratom and kava than alcohol bars. They're far more beneficial to the community.
Yeah, I totally agree. So when you started going to this kava bar 10 years ago, did you just initially just try the kava drinks, or were you doing the kava kratom drinks, or when did you like just try kratom? Like, I don't know a whole lot about kava bars, but I know they typically sell a variety of drinks.
They do. Great question. So I'm a weird bird. I will try any food twice. My mom, going back on her for a second, she's always been about holistic medicine and turmeric and flaxseed and all these things. So my palate isn't totally offended with earthy flavors. So when I was there the first time, I tried both of them. I tried kava, I tried kratom. Arguably, I probably felt the kratom and thought it was the kava, right? It took me a long time to cultivate a taste for kava and to understand how it makes my body feel. But yeah, I mean, there was a period of time where I was staying up too late during the week and I was drinking too much kratom tea and I had to tone back. As a result, even now, while I take kratom daily, I don't take kratom past a certain point in the evening, or kava for that matter, or alcohol. If I do have a beer or two, I try to cut it off about 3 hours before I go to sleep because anything I seem to take hurts my sleep quality. But yeah, I jumped in with both feet to both plants right off the bat.
Yeah, I've been hearing about kava so much for years, and I finally tried some last week. Some kava shot. It's just a kava only shot from a vendor that I use their kratom, and I finally decided to try it, and I was super impressed. Like it's like a really nice chill feeling you get from it. I didn't take it with my kratom. I mean, maybe an hour or two apart. But I can see
Sure.
why that's popular. And then you got all these kratom kava drinks. Although it seems like a lot of them get overused, like people just drink too many of them and have issues
Yeah.
because of it. But it seems like responsible use is a great botanical
Yeah,
with
it
kava.
is. So this misinformation campaign against kratom and kava, you'll find that in the studies that were done on kava in particular. They tried to ban it a long time ago. Fortunately, it seems like kava has been grandfathered into all 50 states. But they took a bunch of rats that were sick. They had like end stage liver failure and gave these rats an inhumane amount of kava extract. The study doesn't tell you what the percentage of the extract was, how it was extracted, whether or not it was combined with alcohol, and concludes by saying that kava causes liver toxicity. It's like the equivalent of taking unhealthy me, who's an alcoholic with a failing liver, and giving me like 5 or 6 kilos of kava every day until I die. Right.
Yeah.
So, kava, from what I can tell, and I work with the plant. From what I can tell, it has a little bit of a reverse tolerance. So the first time you try kava, you're really not going to feel it. Takes subsequent use to get an idea of how it's going to affect you. But it seems like kava is probably the most benevolent intoxicant on the planet. Does not seem to be habit forming. It doesn't seem to be harmful to the body unless you drink alcohol in conjunction with kava because they're both processed by the same enzymes in the liver. It seems to affect the same parts of the brain that alcohol does. But beneficial thing about kava is you don't get a hangover effect. If you do feel buzzed from kava, the sensation doesn't last very long. It will fade away quite quickly. And you can actually eat spicy food. Apparently, that helps it go away. But it's a topical anesthetic, so it does numb the mouth. It's a little bit of a muscle relaxer. So it has benefits in post workout scenarios. It has benefits to help you unwind socially, diminish anxiety, things of that nature. And I mean, again, how much anecdotal evidence do you have in your life until it becomes substantial? I've been going to kava bars for 10 years. And between kratom and kava, I have seen dozens of people who were ravished by addiction, whether it was alcohol, opiates, or other drugs, that now hold down jobs, okay, that have started families, have gotten married, have had kids, have had dogs, all sorts of stuff. They've come back to life by going to these places and having kratom or kava. So while I like to use that and swing it around as a great example, it's a prolific example. I mean, you go to any kava bar in the state of Florida right now, and you might be sitting down next to somebody whose life is night and day different from what it used to be. With alcohol specifically, I would say that vast majority of times, people who develop a problem with alcohol, that can be the most harmful addiction of all because it's so socially acceptable. Um, yeah,
Yeah, what's so interesting with this podcast, so many interviews I've done with this where people are telling me about, oh, they struggled with drug addiction or they have chronic pain issues like myself. And we'll talk about it. And then at some point they'll say, since using Kratom, I don't ever have the desire to drink anymore. Like it's a secondary thing they got out of it. I know
yeah,
that plenty of people do use Kratom specifically to stop using alcohol to help with that alcohol addiction. But it's interesting about how many people like weren't using kratom for that; they were using it for something else that was a bigger problem in their life. But it was almost like, oh, it's the cherry on top. Like I mean, I've interviewed somebody for this podcast who was a hardcore drug addict,
yeah,
and kratom has changed her life, and she was telling me in the interview like I have a six-pack of beer that's been in my fridge for the longest time. Like, normally, it wouldn't last very long. She goes, "I have
yeah,
no desire to drink it. I'm gonna pour it out." And it's
yeah.
just amazing because people are not
It,
thinking of that at the time that they're consuming but then they're like, "Wow, I realize I don't crave alcohol anymore."
Yeah. I mean, look, alcohol has been used as a tool to manipulate society for a lot longer than either of us have been alive. I love Stoic philosophy. And if you read Marcus Aurelius's meditations, he'll talk about, basically that alcohol is used to dull the masses. So why would I be interested in booze? And I have a lot of alcohol at my house that collects dust. Why would I be interested in something that's going to make me feel horrible the next day? Every single time I drive down the road, again, I mentioned this to you before we got on this call that I worked in the tobacco industry and I saw how harshly regulated tobacco was. And for good reason, I know it's not good for you. But if I can drive down the road and see a billboard for a watermelon flavored seltzer that has alcohol, and that doesn't appeal to children, but a watermelon flavored cigarillo appeals to children and is banned, we have a major case of hypocrisy going on in this country. Um, Alcohol for me, I've had some magical nights where I went out with the boys or my friends or coworkers. We had a blast. The next day I woke up and said, "Gee, that was amazing." Every ad you see for Budweiser makes it appear that that moment is magical when you have alcohol by your side. But 9 times, maybe 95 times out of 100 or 99 out of 100, when you go out to a bar, it's not magical. You get bored. You're like, let me go play some darts. You're having a uninspired conversation with a colleague and you wake up the next day and you pay for it. So when you can go to a Kratom bar and sit down and have a Kratom tea, have an amazing conversation, wake up the next day and not skip a beat, not feel hungover, not feel lethargic, go to work, have a great day. You're not putting on weight because you're drinking a 6-pack of beer every night. You're drinking something that has 0 calories, maybe a little lemon and some sweetener in there. But yeah, unintended consequence for sure is that it's a lot harder for me to justify going out and drinking when I have kratom in my life. And I think that's amazing. Obviously, alcohol companies don't want to hear that. They don't want to see it. But I think our society is calling for that. I just saw a study that said Gen Z is the lowest rate of consumption of alcohol out of any generation we've had in the last 100 years. And I think that's amazing because they're looking for something else. Whether it's kratom or not, remains to be seen. But if they're not interested in drinking like I was, or my parents' generation was, I think society will be better for it.
Yeah, I agree. So let's go back to like when you first started kratom. Uh, how Tell us about your experience when you first started with that. Like how did it impact your daily life and overall well being?
Well, I can tell you I had some times where I overconsumed it before I really figured out what my appropriate dosage level is. There were some times where I got nausea, but initially what I noticed is that when I took kratom, I was more talkative. I felt like I was a better listener, and I was kind of more in tune with what was going on. Again, this was, of course, in tandem with the kava bar, so I became kind of like obsessed with being a social butterfly, getting out there interacting and meeting people, and it helped me decompress big time. I mean, I was just starting a new career. I was learning everything I possibly could. I was burning the candle at both ends, so they say. And for me, Kratom was a great release button that didn't necessarily harm my professional trajectory because I wasn't hungover. I was getting into the office on time, and it gave me something to look forward to when my day was through. So, yeah, I can't say enough positive things about initially stepping into Kratom. And again, coming from a recreational perspective, because I wasn't overcoming an addiction at the time. And, you know, I wasn't in any significant pain. I will say, when I have hurt myself, um, I'm I refuse to take any sort of pharmaceutical opiates. So a little bit of kratom goes a long way for my pain. I'm not allowed to tell people kratom helps with pain. That's the sticky part. But I can tell you from personal experience, absolutely, it has helped me deal with lower back issues and stuff when I've hurt myself at the gym without getting me high. And I think that that's invaluable.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Do you consume kratom daily or just as you feel like is something you want to like, being a recreational user, I'm sure is very different from those of us like myself suffer from chronic pain and like I need to take it every day. So I'm not suffering from pain and not having to take pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, I do. I take it every day. I take these little chewable tablets. They're a medium dosage. I would say the medium dosage, 45 milligrams of metrogenine per tablet. I might take two or three of those a day. I cut myself off usually in the afternoon, and then when I want to get some socialization in, and I don't want to take kratom, I take some kava. I can tell you, not to emphasize on this, but because I work in the industry, at times I'm at trade shows interacting with people, and I'll take product with them. So sometimes my consumption goes through the roof with kratom, and I have to taper it back. But I don't skip a beat. It's as simple as me deciding to just have two chewable tablets the next day. But again, I'm not coming from a former opiate addict perspective. I know that for some of my friends who were formerly addicted to heroin, offsetting the withdrawal um, from heroin with kratom just means you pay the piper at a later day if you don't have your kratom. So since I don't have those pathways developed in my body, I've never really had any significant withdrawal when tapering off of kratom, or even if I take a tolerance break. But yeah, first thing I do, I wake up, I drink some water, I go to the gym, I work out for about an hour. And then once I get into the office around 10 o'clock, I'd say I take my first bit of kratom. There's products out there that are super strong. That's not my cup of tea. To speak on the benefits that I get from it, I feel like, have you seen the movie Limitless?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great movie, right? Obviously, nootropic sales in this country spiked after that movie because people were like, it's got to be possible to take a little pill that, boosts your productivity. Obviously, kratom is nowhere near me turning $100 into $1 million in the stock exchange today, but I feel like I get some pep in my step. It gives me some positivity, a little extra energy, um, and maybe helps to put me into a state of flow so that when I am working, I can stay focused. I know for a fact that I have ADHD. I think mine is caused purely by environment, that I have a smartphone with me. I get my emails and texts and phone calls and social media. But with Kratom, it helps me dial it in, stay focused, and get things done. So when taking those super heavy dosed Kratom products, it makes me more relaxed and sedative. And that's not what I'm looking for. Doesn't make any sense to go hit the gym and get a workout in if I feel like sleeping on the couch. I understand some people need that level of strength with kratom products in order to feel okay. Um, but for me, medium is my sweet spot.
Yeah. So I know there are plenty of people that do use kratom recreationally, but they you hear stories about how they overuse and they'll sometimes come into my social media comments and badmouth kratom because they just used it just to use it and went crazy with it. So like for you being a more of a recreational kratom consumer, what kind of advice would you give to somebody of like, hey, like This is not something you just take a whole bunch of because you
Yeah,
can run into problems. Like, do you ever talk to people? I mean, I know as a kratom vendor, you can't talk about certain things, but I mean, just in general, um, how, like what kind of ways can you talk to people, or even just give me advice on how to talk to people about it? Because there'll be people that are they're just casual consumers that just for recreational, but they just definitely go a little crazy and then complain about
sure.
how they had issues stopping.
Well, I could probably write a thesis on this. I think the vast majority of us are always trying to run away from any sort of responsibility that we might have had to ourselves. But I can tell you, I think I summed this up for a friend of mine. He's an alcoholic. He no longer drinks. I said, listen, man, when you take kratom and it feels good, do you like that? He goes, yeah. I said, okay. Do you consider yourself to be a spoiled brat? He goes, no. Why? I said, well, a spoiled brat is somebody who would expect to feel good every time they do the same thing, right? So let's talk about a cupcake. Does a cupcake taste good? Yeah, it does. If you eat one every day, does it taste good? Maybe not. If you eat five a day every day, does it taste good? Maybe not. So I said, I want you to, the next time you take kratom, I want you to think about how you feel and how it makes you feel and appreciate that moment. And also say that I'm not a spoiled brat and I'm not necessarily entitled to this good recreational buzz that I'm getting right now every day. Okay. I don't get what I want in life every single day. I work for it. Sometimes that means I hit, and sometimes that means that I miss. So I guess the best way that I've described it is this: talk to yourself, ask yourself, are you letting this substance or any substance take control of your life? Okay. Who's in the driver's seat? And ask yourself this question: am I so spoiled that every time I take my 4 ounce of kratom tea every day, that I have to feel the same way every day? Because not a single thing on this planet operates like that. Not a single thing. Not a television show, not a movie that you watch, not a conversation with your best friend, okay? You are meant to have points where things feel good and they don't feel good. I'm not saying kratom should feel bad, but what I'm saying is don't be a spoiled brat and expect that kratom is going to feel just as great today as it will tomorrow and the next day unless you're willing to implement some tolerance breaks. Taper off your consumption and play with those levels. If you start on Monday with one capsule and by Friday you end at five, Saturday take three, Sunday take two, and Monday take one. These are just example numbers. Play with your tolerance. Ask yourself how you're doing. Check in with yourself and don't have a sense of entitlement about it. And I think my friend appreciated putting it into that perspective because he never really thought about, especially in consideration of alcohol, he was chasing the dragon. This alcohol makes me feel great. I deserve to feel great like this every day. No one deserves to feel on top of the world every single day. Good only feels good because of a little bit of bad. And bad only feels bad because of good. You need the contrast. So stop expecting plants or areas of entertainment or your partner to solve all of your problems and be perfect every single day because you're setting yourself up for disaster. Tolerance breaks. People in cannabis talk about this all the time. You know, take a tolerance break and come back to it at a lower level and you'll appreciate it more.
I love that. Well said. Wow, that was really
Thank you.
good. I had a feeling you'd have a good answer for that question. So now
Thank
let's
you.
talk about how you got into the kratom industry. You are a kratom company, a vendor. So how did that all get started?
Yeah. So I worked my way through college. I graduated college late, but I graduated debt free. I was very proud of that. I could not get a job. I ended up getting an unpaid internship while working at Red Lobster, working 70 hours a week at that point. 30 hours were free, unpaid. 40 hours were at the restaurant to pay my bills. And that first job in the tobacco industry became my first career. I worked my way from the bottom to the top, unpaid intern to the VP of sales. Um, it was quite a large company, and I was very proud of that. But I was hitting my head on the ceiling of experience and pay. I just turned 30, and I realized that if I stayed another 5 years, I wasn't going to make much more. I wasn't going to learn much more. So I took a risk and I left. And I went into logistics and I made the best money of my life as a freight broker. Um, I want to make it very clear that I'm not personally passionate about tobacco or logistics. I believe that just like the analogy with Kratom, okay, we lie to ourselves and we say that we deserve or we are entitled to feeling good every day, which isn't fair because it sets us up for disappointment. Um, we do the same thing when we think about our careers. We think that somehow we deserve to do something we're passionate about, and that just makes life easy. Because every once in a while, you'll hear an actor or a famous business person talk about how they just followed their passion and that made them happy. Well, that's too nicely summed up, and it's not often accurate. So while working in logistics, making the best money of my life, I was so proud of what I did. I bumped into somebody at a kava bar that was a business owner, and he mentioned that he owned a kratom company and needed somebody to fill some big shoes. And I was very dismissive. I was like, no, I'm good. I'm making really good money, yada, yada, yada. But I considered the lifestyle that I had. I was working 7 days a week. I was burning myself out. I was getting woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning, most nights of the week. Very stressful, demanding job. And I asked myself this question. I said, man, when you were in the tobacco business, grinding, traveling 3 weeks out of the month, and somebody came along and said, hey, I need you. I need your skill set for a Kratom Kava business. Would you have jumped ship? And I said, I wouldn't bat an eye. I wouldn't have bat an eye. I would have hopped out of the tobacco industry in an instant to do what I'm doing now. And I think that helped me come to the realization that, like, yo, I can make this change. And while I just said that passion doesn't necessarily mean everything is easy, I now get to sell products that I'm passionate about, work in an industry that I'm passionate about, and do the things that I'm passionate about, which is personnel development, team development, making people better versions of themselves. So even though I wasn't passionate about logistics or tobacco, I was passionate about doing something well, getting it done well. And I found that passion and that motivated me and propelled me forward. And now, working in the industry for the last almost 3 years, I'm doing the same thing, except that I deeply care about what we sell. I deeply care about the customers when they choose to buy our products, because, as you mentioned before, people are stigmatized by picking these products. If you tell your aunt that you decided to start taking kratom and she saw a news story that wasn't the one you were interviewed on, she thinks you're taking gas station heroin. So you're putting your livelihood at risk. Sometimes in a professional setting, people will judge you for that as well. You're challenging your personal relationships by saying, I take kratom. And so that's part of the reason why I'm so fired up about doing this the right way, building up an empire, helping our customers grow, and making sure that we're ethical about it, because I don't want to ever get a notice in the mail that somebody's life was damaged by my products. You know, I really don't. I dread that. Yeah, I want people to buy my stuff. That's great. Buy all my kratom, but not at the expense of your livelihood. And I know that some recreational or non recreational users go overboard with kratom, which is why I try to be explicit and tell people it is habit forming. Tread lightly. Don't let something control your life, even if that hurts my sales at the end of the day. So hopefully that answers your question. I have a tendency to ramble a little bit. So,
No, it was
you know,
perfect. It was perfect,
thank
and
you.
I love this because you're at a kratom company that are doing things right, that really care about the customers and not just in it for the bucks. It seems
Right.
like there's too many in the industry that just only care about money and not the people. And to say, like, I don't want anybody to be harmed. I want, people to know about this product. And it's amazing because not too many kratom companies will be so forthcoming with information like that that
Yeah.
benefits the consumers. And I love how you're a big advocate in this community. I mean, I before you reached out to me, I was already seeing your videos on YouTube, and I just remember going, "Well, this guy's great because he's just like putting out knowledge bombs about kratom."
Thank
Because
you.
there are people that do that, like myself and some others that are kratom consumers that are trying to help educate people. We don't see too many kratom. There's a handful that are doing like what you're doing, trying to just help educate people and
Yeah.
share factual information, and I love that you do that. So can you tell us a little bit about like how what motivated you to start this YouTube channel, and you're like putting videos out like every day, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Every week we film a video. It's funny, my graphic designer, he did a video titled "When Your Gen Z Employee Edits Your Videos," and it's just me doing all the little cutouts of the videos, where I'm breathing heavy or something, and
Yeah.
it's hilarious. But honestly, there's no teleprompter. I might write down a couple of notes. I might be responding to somebody's comment or question. Or something that we spitballed in the office. Why did we decide to do this? Because it does expose us to risk. Um, Number one, I feel like I hedge my bets. When I go onto a video and I tell people about Kratom, I like to say something like, hey, I'm not a doctor. I sell these products for a living. Take what I say with a grain of salt. Consult with a doctor. And for the love of God, if you're on 15 medications, don't just go throwing Kratom in there because I don't know how they interact with each other. Ask your doctor. But there is very little representation from the company side of things. And it's so easy for regulators to say, well, since they don't speak up and they don't offer any suggestions to their consumers, even though it's in response to the regulations that exist or the lack of approval from the FDA, it's so easy for regulators to say there's no representation. These kratom companies are all evil. All they care about is money. All they care about is hooking their people on their products, um, and that's extremely harmful. So if we are the one that is the only one putting ourselves out there and saying, "Hey, here's some info. We're here to answer your questions. We're here to interact with you positively. We're trying to do the right thing. We appreciate your support." Then, yeah, it helps bolster us. It helps us to be a voice within the community. And my goal with the channel is to get enough viewership out there that if the Florida state decides they want to pass some cruddy bill, that my voice can be heard and people in the community can respond. So it is a risk. It's something I enjoy. I admire you because at some point I would like to start a podcast, but not related to kratom, more towards like mental well being and trying to see the positive side of things, even when you're going through something negative. So it puts me out there, and I'm cultivating some skills by doing it. And so far, most of the comments have been positive. We've gotten some really cool feedback so far. It's not really impacting our business one way or the other. We don't get enough views, but it's out there. We're doing our best, and hopefully that will open some doors for us in business in the future.
I think it will. Many times with social media like that, it can take a while for people to discover. I mean, I've had my YouTube channel, my Crime Stories podcast YouTube channel, for about a year and a half, I think now, and it's just slow going. But the beauty with YouTube is a search engine. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. Like Google's number one search engine, Google owns YouTube. So it's the number
Yeah,
two search engine. And what's great with you creating video content about Kratom, I'm doing that all the time as well, is that people could find one of your videos 5 years from now and it could
yeah,
help change their life. And I love TikTok because TikTok has been great for us connecting with fellow Kratom consumers and advocates and just helping to educate people about kratom. But those videos are so in the moment. So they do great short term, but
yes,
there's just no long term with it. If I have a really helpful video I made like a year ago, you'd have to scroll so far you'll never find it. But with
right.
YouTube, you'll easily see
Something
it. So,
old can pop to the top. Yeah,
exactly. So I've been actually taking some of my TikTok videos and putting them over on my YouTube shorts. And it's really getting a lot of attention by doing that. I've been watching the analytics on that, and it's like, wow, this is bringing more people to my YouTube channel. And I think more people are learning about Kratom through this. But it's a process because, this is my almost 30 years of digital marketing experience coming out. But I love that you're just doing the videos and you're doing them consistently because that's the most important thing. But it takes time for people to keep seeing that in their feed and get to know, like, and trust you. And so over
yeah,
time, it will help your business and you'll see an impact of like, because people are getting to know you, the person who sells Kratom. And you
yeah,
don't see that a lot. You don't see very many vendors. I know there's a lot of rules on what you can and can't say, but you can still make videos and be the main person so people do get to know, like, and trust you and just help educate. And I think you're doing a great job. I don't see too many
Thank you.
companies doing that the way you are. And how long have you been doing that now?
Not much longer than 35 days, maybe. I mean, we've scheduled stuff out to the middle of April. So yeah, the consistency is, from what I've learned, consistency is key. Responding to comments is key when you're starting a channel. So we're going to keep doing this, and I think one of my goals is to find all of the most popular kratom related content and respond to it. Because if your name is Dave and you live in Kentucky and you've heard of kratom and you don't know where to start, and every YouTube search shows up with, "Oh, kratom ruined my life," day 30 of kratom withdrawal, videos talking about how harmful it is. There's no alternative to that. And then on the flip side, if you use Google and you look up what is kratom, you're either going to get a terrible posting from Mayo Clinic, which is horribly uninformed, or some company shamelessly trying to sell their products. Um, Facebook and Instagram don't let us talk about kratom or kava, for that matter, and sponsor any ads. Our stuff gets suspended and taken down. YouTube has been at least a good outlet for us to speak our minds. And also, it's kind of nice because I'm not actually asking anybody to buy anything. Okay. I literally, if somebody's got a bag of remarkable herbs in front of them and they're trying to figure out how to dose and they see my dosing video and it helps them, cool. Awesome. Like you said, with time and familiarity, maybe that creates some customer conversions. But I'm trying to help bring the industry, even if it is individually, I'm trying to help bring the industry out of the shrouds of the shadows where it's been for a long time. You've heard of OPMS, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, their name is meant to sound like opium.
Right.
They're one of the first founding forefathers of kratom within the CPG industry by making products that were way too strong and shrouding their whole business in mystery. You don't know where their office is. You don't know who their people are. There's a separate, company that pushes all the products, but that's owned by a parent company. So it's kind of difficult to, you know, look them in the eyes, so to speak. But I understand why too, because they're making a lot of money. They're making a lot of money with a product that's not well accepted by the rest of the community. And they are offering a product that does help people, regardless of whether or not their products are strong. So why would they want to be forthcoming and tell regulators where they're at? I don't blame them. But sharing the space with a number of other companies too, helping to add some legitimacy to the whole industry is important. If they get to see my face and if they're on the cusp of trying the bag that's in front of them for the first time and I make them feel a little bit more comfortable and it changes their life for the better, then I've done a good deed. You know, very important that these videos are cautionary, but upbeat so that people do the right thing, deal with it responsibly, and it does have a positive impact rather than a negative one. It's going to be unavoidable. Somebody is going to take too much. Somebody is going to lack self-control, as they do with Frito-Lays and cigarettes and alcohol. Somebody is always going to abuse whatever is in front of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I just love that you're educating people and that's your primary goal. And I think that we need more of that. So yeah, just keep doing what you're doing
Thank you.
because it's definitely because I usually check YouTube for just kratom related videos very regularly, and your stuff just keeps popping up in the feed. So if people are searching for kratom, like they're going to see you, and yeah, I think it's super smart of you. Now I love that you're just so big with advocacy and help sharing positive information about kratom. And I know you're in Florida, a lot happening there in the moment. But so many times people will say, because like you went and spoke at your state capitol in Florida, and so many people want to get more involved in advocacy that are kratom consumers, but they don't know what to do. And they're always asking, well, what do I do? How do I do it? Whereas you're just doing it. So what kind of advice would you give to people of how to get more involved as a kratom consumer to help keep kratom legal, especially when these bans keep popping up and they're constantly
Right.
popping up?
Right. So, okay, great question. Number one, they don't make it easy. Okay. Uh, it's yes, it's simple enough to say yes. I'm just getting out there and doing it. But my God, you want to try and sign up to visit the state capitol? They don't make it easy. Their website has a million buttons. We don't go to school for this. They don't let us know how our political system works, and when they do, we don't pay attention. Um, so the biggest thing that you can do if you use Kratom, okay, is to be an upstanding member of society, contribute, and make sure that you let people know that you take kratom and it's a part of a healthy, happy, productive lifestyle. That's the biggest point of advocacy that you can do. If you're watching this right now and you're a police officer, a firefighter, an EMT, and you take kratom, your voice will matter unequivocally more than my voice or Madalyn's voice or anyone else's voice, because your badge, your state of authority is extremely important and eye opening for people who have never heard of it and assume that it's gas station heroin. If you're a doctor, a lawyer, or a local politician, you as well have a magnified voice. Because I work in the industry, my voice is this big. I can do what I want to try and broadcast it, but those with a rational mind will say, well, he sells it for a living. Of course, anything he says is biased, whether or not it is. So, yeah, listen, if you know somebody who's involved and fighting with these advocacy groups, ask them how they're doing it. We've talked about the American Kratom Association. They're not perfect, but they're doing a hell of a job protecting kratom. Okay. You can find their website with a quick Google search. You can sign up for their newsletters. You can respond to their emails. They provide you links that you can write emails to the politicians who propose bills. If you're in the business like we are, sign up for your local chamber of commerce. It's what I did immediately after leaving the state capitol. I'm involving myself with the local chamber of commerce. I'm going to be doing sponsorships for local events. I'm going to be doing meetings with our local politicians because they need to know we matter. Okay. That's what I'm trying to do on my end. From a consumer perspective, show up. Okay. 5,000 people, when the Tampa Bay Times produced their article about kratom being bad, 5,000 people signed the petition to help them take it down and that they were going to show up at the Tampa Bay Times. Myself and maybe 15 other people showed up. Okay. Those articles are harmful. And, if you're really passionate about this, you want to keep it around, I wouldn't stop you from being petty. A newspaper puts a crappy article out there, go leave a comment on there about how poor the journalism was. Okay. One thing that I can tell you about any article talking about a kratom related death, if they say kratom killed that young man, 33 years old, and they don't say that the toxicology report came back clean with no other intoxicants in their system, which they never do, then they probably had other intoxicants in their system. And this is just a great way for that journalistic entity to gain clicks. Bad news travels faster than good news. They're not going to get anybody to look on their website if it says kratom is a great plant and it's helping save people's lives, right? So get involved, get pissed off, write those emails to your politicians, show up at town hall. We need people who can combat the negative voices that are out there, and contribute to society positively. Spread the word. If kratom changed your life for the better, go tell people about it and let them know how it changed your life for the better. And maybe they get on board too, you know?
I love this. All of that was so well said. And
Thank you.
that's what I started doing. I when I started Kratom 6 years ago as a consumer, I wasn't very comfortable talking about it with other people because it just seems so stigmatized. Just like when I was in pain management for 9 years taking high-powered opioids, I didn't go around telling people, "Oh,
Yeah.
by the way, let me hold on, I gotta go pop this OxyContin pill so I don't suffer in pain." It's just people have this thought of what they hear that word oxycontin and they already think the worst of that because of the history of it and what the media has shown us. But it was actually one of the best medications I ever had during my chronic
Yeah.
pain time in pain management, free kratom. So I'm not going to ever knock it or be negative about it, but I was never comfortable talking about it. So when I switched to kratom those first few years, I didn't even mention it to doctors at first. But over time, I got more comfortable and wanted to be more of an advocate. And I just started telling anybody and everybody. And it's interesting because, of course, some people are just always going to be negative because all they hear is
Of
negative
course.
stuff, especially in the
Yeah.
media. And that Tampa Bay Times, ooh, that was a Terrible
Uh,
reporting, terrible reporting. We've talked about it plenty on our Kratom Gals live streams. We've had plenty of them talking. Oh yeah, because it was just so poor journalism for sure. But they just
it
skewed
was.
everything dramatically.
So the
Yeah.
AKA said to us that apparently there was a law firm that sponsored that article, and I think it might be the
Yes,
law firm that goes after the kratom related deaths.
they do.
And one thing I wanted to say this so badly at the state capitol to one of the ladies who'd lost her son, and not to make light of it, but whose son or daughter calls their mom and says, "Hey, I'm a heroin addict." Okay, not many. Usually, that parent, if they're highly involved in their child's life, will find out as a consequence of bad behavior, getting into trouble. But some kids are really, really good at hiding drug use from their parents. So then, when kratom comes around and they decide they want to get sober, they are buying a legal product, which they don't have a problem showing to their parents. So when their parent says, "Hey, what's that little bottle on your desk?" "Oh, that's kratom. It's really good. It helps me with my anxiety." What it's really helping them do is get over their heroin withdrawal or their fentanyl withdrawal, right? And so when they go back to their dealer and they purchase their normal hit from their dealer, because their tolerance has been decreased, it's a lethal dose, and then they drop dead. And the only new variable in the parent's life, to their knowledge, is kratom. Okay, so their son, who they might not have been a part of their life, very close to them, comes back into their life with kratom. Kratom's the new variable. The son can't stay strong, breaks down, buys their normal hit, overdoses, and dies. The parent says it must have been the kratom. And of course, if they find kratom in that person's system, well, cause and effect. And it's really, really unfortunate. I've known too many people in my life that have died from drugs, prescription or alcohol, and I don't know anybody that's died from kratom. And I know a lot of people who take kratom. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, responsible use of kratom is not harmful. And I've been in the same room with some of the leading kratom experts talking about their findings, which is not something that you die from by just consuming it by itself. Like, if
right?
somebody has kratom in their system, they most likely had so many other drugs in their system, usually
Substances. Yeah.
narcotics that are harmful. But I mean, it's one of the reasons why I advocate so hard. And it sounds like the same with you. It's like, we're just trying to make sure people are educated and understand and get all the
Yeah.
facts. Like the news story, I was on my NBC news story when they showed the grieving mom and talked about how her son died. They mentioned that he had some doctor prescribed medications in the system, but they didn't show the tox report that showed them tons of different medications were in his system,
Yeah.
and some of them
Yeah.
looked illicit. So it's and medical issues as well. So
Right.
we're just trying to always help paint a fuller picture of the truth and educate people. And I think it's just so important. We need more of that. So I just love that you're big on doing this as well in the industry.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it sucks. Loss of life is huge, right? It's hard to make an argument in the face of someone who just lost a loved one. In Florida, there was a lady who passed away over on the east coast of Florida. Apparently, she took some kratom, and I think 2 weeks after she passed, there was another woman who passed away in the east coast of Florida. She went to Florida on vacation with her family, went to the beach, was out in the sun, and chugged 2 bottles of water in rapid succession and passed away. Um, so, if water can kill you, where are the advocacy groups asking for regulation that puts a warning label on a bottle of water saying, "Don't drink more than two of these in a X number of window of time"? It all comes down to this litigious society that we live in, that people are so quick to try and monetize tragedy and sue. Some industries are too large to come down from lawsuits, and other industries like ours are a lot more vulnerable. So, one thing that when I talked to you earlier, I mentioned I'm happy to share the space with other people in the industry who do the right thing. There's some competitors out there that are wonderful, marvelous. Their team is excellent. They do good things in the industry. I would love to be able to kick out all the dirty players that are in the industry. and it's hard to do. The end of the day, there's different mechanics in the business that people are interested in certain attributes. When it comes to kratom, they want cheap, they want to make a lot of money. They don't care if it's good. They don't take it themselves. And so, with that in mind, you see a whole slew of substandard kratom products making it into the market and in front of consumers who don't know any better. Maybe money is tight. Maybe it is important to have a value brand out there for kratom. Somebody can buy something for $2 instead of 12. Um, but I would argue that kratom is supposed to cost money, and you're supposed to have to pay a reasonable price for a reasonable product. It's not meant to be dirt cheap, and if it is dirt cheap, you should be a little bit worried about the quality of it and the team behind the product. There's people who work in the industry who don't take kratom and don't care about whether or not they help people. They just want to make money. And I'm not here to brag, but with these new tariffs and stuff, we might have to reconsider some of our vendors. But as of right now, all of our machinery and all of our packaging is made in the U.S. You know, but we're seeing cost increases that are even transcending just what happens when you import products into the United States. Even the companies we work with that are U.S. based, they've got increased costs on their raw materials. But we could have gone the route of any other competitor and gotten Chinese packaging from the start, and Chinese material, and maybe employed people at our warehouse that were undocumented laborers. But proudly, we are more U.S. based than just about any other company you purchase from, except for the kratom. It comes from Indonesia. That's kind of unavoidable as of right now. So,
Right.
would be nice if we could get a couple thousand acres of land in Florida and find a way to grow it here. That'd be great. But we're nowhere near being able to do that.
Yeah, it'd be nice when there's that ability to do it. Abram, this has been such a great conversation. I'll definitely have to bring you on for
Thank you.
another discussion sometime soon because I just feel like there's just so much more we can talk about. But let's wrap up with this. So, knowing everything you know now about kratom, and you know a lot, you got turned on to it 10 years ago. You've been in the industry, working in it for the last 3 years. What advice would you give to someone to help them get started in their kratom journey?
Great. Go slow. Do not rush into it. Okay. Don't be impatient. Don't expect that the first time you try kratom, you're going to get this magical experience. Be prepared to start slow over the course of several days. Okay. Um, Start with the raw plant matter, capsules or powder. Okay. And start with a very low dose and see how you feel. And really ask yourself if you can tap into that and figure out how this is making you feel. I think it'll be a much better way for somebody to start than to jumping in with both feet. There's a lot of people who bring their ego to the table when trying a product for the first time. Could be liquor, could be whatever, and they're like, "Oh, I'm a big strong man. I could take a ton of this and not even feel it." Don't do that, right? If you want to get started, do your research online. Talk to some people you might know. Go to a local kava bar if there is one. Ask some questions. Um, Ask yourself what you want kratom to do for you, okay? And then start slow.
Yeah, well said. This has been great, Abram.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. It was awesome. I appreciate you.